The room was quiet, too quiet, as if the world outside had stopped breathing. I sat on the bed, talking to myself to stay calm. "It's just another night," I whispered, staring at the clock as it turned 3:17 a.m. Suddenly, a voice answered softly from the darkness. "You say that every night." My heart skipped. I hadn't spoken out loud, or so I thought. I stood up slowly and said, "Who's there?" The bulb above me flickered, and the mirror reflected my face. But the lips in the mirror moved before mine did. "Don't pretend you don't know me," the reflection whispered. My hands began to shake as footsteps echoed from behind the walls, not outside them, but inside, like something walking through the house itself. I ran to the door and pulled hard. "Please open, please," I cried. The door creaked and replied in a deep, unnatural voice. "You locked me in when you started talking alone." The walls tightened, the air grew cold, and a shadow stretched across the ceiling, bending in ways no body should. In the corner of the room, the shadow spoke again, clearer now. "Say my name," it demanded. I shook my head and whispered, "No." The shadow laughed softly and said, "You already did. Every night." The footsteps stopped, the lights went out, and my voice disappeared with the darkness. The next morning, the room was empty. No sign of a struggle, no broken door, only a message scratched into the wall. The silence after that night did not mean peace. It meant waiting. In the days that followed, I stopped talking completely. No whispers, no thoughts spoken aloud. But every night at 3:17 a.m., the clock still ticked louder than normal, as if reminding me that it remembered. I would lie awake, eyes open, listening to my own breathing, afraid that even a sigh might invite it back. One night, I heard my own voice coming from the hallway. Calm, slow, familiar. It was saying things I used to say to myself. "Everything will be fine, you're safe." I covered my mouth with both hands, shaking my head. "That's not me," I thought. The voice laughed softly and replied, "Then why do I sound exactly like you?" The walls began to whisper next. Not loudly, but close, like mouths pressed against my ears. "You fed us with words," they said. "Now we speak." Shadows moved without light, stretching across the floor and crawling up the bed. I felt something sit beside me, heavy and cold, breathing when I breathed. I gathered courage and whispered, "What do you want from me?" The answer came instantly from everywhere at once. "A listener," it said. "Someone who won't stop talking." The mirror cracked on its own, and inside it I saw myself sitting peacefully, still talking, even though my lips were sealed. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the house inhaled deeply. The lights burst, the darkness folded inward, and my voice was pulled out of my chest like a thread. I tried to scream, but only silence came out. The last thing I heard was my own voice whispering happily, "Don't worry, I'll talk for you now." The house still stands. New people move in. They say it feels lonely at night. They say they hear someone talking softly after midnight. And if you ever hear a voice answer you when you speak alone, remember this. Weeks passed, but the house never truly slept. Even when it was empty, even when no one spoke, it listened. I thought losing my voice would save me, but I was wrong. Silence only made it stronger. At night, I could hear thoughts that were not mine forming words in the air, sentences hanging without a speaker. The house had learned how to think. One night, as I sat alone in the dark, I felt something wet drip onto my hand. I looked up. Words were bleeding from the ceiling, slowly forming sentences in my own handwriting. "Talk to me," they read. I shook my head violently. Inside my mind, I screamed, "I won't." The walls responded immediately, "You already are." The television turned on by itself. The screen showed my room, but from the corner. I watched myself sitting there, motionless, mouth closed. Then the version on the screen turned its head and spoke clearly. "He doesn't need you anymore." The screen went black, and I felt something crawl out of my chest, like my voice leaving my body for good. From that night on, people began hearing stories about the house. Visitors said if you stayed quiet long enough, it would start conversations for you. Soft ones at first, comforting ones. It would tell you everything you wanted to hear. And once you listened, it would never stop talking. They say if you stand outside the house at 3:17 a.m., you can hear thousands of voices whispering at once, trapped inside the walls. All of them sound calm. All of them sound familiar. All of them once believed they were alone. After that night, I realized the house was no longer waiting for voices. It was creating them. Even in complete silence, I could hear conversations happening behind the walls, slow and calm, like people discussing normal things. Laughter sometimes echoed softly, but it never sounded happy. It sounded practiced, as if the house was learning emotions the way it learned words. One evening, I found a notebook on the floor that I did not own. Every page was filled with sentences written neatly in my handwriting. They described things I had never said out loud. My fears, my regrets, my secrets. On the last page, one line was written darker than the rest. You don't need a voice to speak. The moment I read it, the whisper came again. See? We already understand you. Sleep became impossible. Whenever my eyes closed, I felt lips near my ear, forming words without sound. The house was speaking directly into my thoughts now. It showed me memories that weren't mine. Other people sitting alone, talking to themselves, smiling before realizing someone was listening. I understood then. I wasn't the first. I was just the one who noticed too late. One night, the front door opened by itself. I didn't move. Couldn't. A calm voice filled the room and said, "You're free to leave." I looked toward the doorway and saw darkness shaped like a hallway that never ended. My own voice whispered from inside the walls, "Don't go. Stay. Talking is easier here." That's when I understood the truth. The house didn't trap bodies. Trapped voices. Now I sit here, writing this without speaking, hoping silence might protect you. But if you're reading this alone, and you hear a thought answer back, it's not your mind. It's listening. And once it knows how you sound inside, it will never stop the conversation. Time lost its meaning inside that house. Days and nights blended together because the house decided when darkness should fall. Even without a voice, I could feel words moving inside me, lining up, waiting for permission that I could no longer give or deny. The walls had stopped whispering. Now they simply knew what I was thinking before the thought was complete. One night, I saw fingerprints slowly appear on the inside of my skin, pressing outward as if something trapped inside me was trying to speak. My mouth opened on its own, but the sound that came out was not fear. It was calm, practiced, welcoming. "It's okay," the voice said, using my lips. "You can talk here forever." I tried to bite my